So, hello everyone. Welcome to the Remote Work Insights and Strategies from Africa panel discussion. My name is Dr. Deanna Davis, and I will be the moderator for this session. For quality purposes, everyone will only be on listening mode. And note that this session is recorded for attendees to access post-conference. For all questions, please post them in the chat box, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists. Ms. Durvine Sindiga is Chief Operating Officer at the Study Journeys and Gateway International Group. She is an accomplished marketing, brand, and communication professional with broad marketing experience by encompassing strategic planning, return on investment, brand development, and communication, with the ability and skill set to provide creative, innovative, enthusiastic, and forward-thinking leadership in a team environment. Dr. Simon Obwatho is faculty leader at Africa Nazarene University. He is committed to learner-centered university education, quality teaching, and face-to-face and digital classroom experience in the higher education administrative landscape. And Dr. Nicholas Letting is CEO of Kenya Accountants and Secretaries National Examination Board. He is a strategic thinker and a resourceful person with a demonstrable leadership and management capacity, including knowledge of financial management, corporate governance, and strategic people management. Dr. Letting is committed and motivated to the actualization of Kenya's prosperity through implementation of Vision 2030. So now I will ask the first question to Dr. Letting, and that first question is, what role do you see African businesses playing in the global economy as the continent continues to experience significant growth and development?
Thank you so much. I'm audible, Dan?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
First of all, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction and welcome to Africa. Africa is a home of over 1.2 billion people, a rich continent with minerals and many substance, fertile people with a lot of knowledge and skills, and has been about 54 countries in one continent. And so Africa, in my view, is a place where businesses can have a lot of future potential in terms of technology and in terms of culture. We have various cultures that are different from every part of the continent, from north to south, from east to west, and crisscrossing Africa. Africa then is we are currently, as Kenya is in the eastern side of Africa, and it's one of the advanced economies in the region, apart from South Africa and Nigeria in West Africa. South Africa is in South Africa, North Africa there is in Egypt, and therefore looking at the spread of technology in those countries, the 54 countries, basically 50% of Africa's population is Anglophone, and the other 50% is Francophone speaking parts. And so in terms of investments in technology, I see Africa as a continent has developed in various terms. You will find in Africa very rich economies or countries and nations and states, but also you'll still find in some other parts of Africa some very fragile states. Recently, you observed that there was some chaos in Sudan, a very rich country in form of minerals. But at the same time, we have countries like Kinshasa or the Democratic Republic of Congo with very rich minerals, but currently a peaceful and calm environment. Nigeria has also had its share of challenges and civil wars. But then again, you see situations where Africa is currently to obtain its space. And therefore, without spending too much time, Africa is united under the African Union, whose headquarters is in Addis Ababa, and it is making efforts to promote development in Africa. So I think I will leave it at that for now and come back to other questions later on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your response. And so that brings me to, and you mentioned some of the challenges. So Ms. Sindiga, the next question is for you. What challenges and opportunities do you foresee for African businesses as virtual work becomes more prevalent in the coming years?
If I can begin from the perspective of opportunities, you find that the virtual work introduces the aspect of diverse talent. So African businesses now have an opportunity to introduce different perspectives or even sophisticated expertise and skills into our current business setups. We also have the aspect of test before you hire. Virtual work brings on board part-time kind of work approaches, which gives businesses an opportunity to actually really test whether you are the right fit in terms of culture or you're the right fit in terms of talent contribution. So that gives businesses opportunities to kind of manage their labor costs and labor resources because they will actually eventually get return for their investment. There's also ease of expansion for African businesses because they will now have reliable connections in other countries, have an employee who then can contribute towards expansion, joint ventures, and partnerships on behalf of local businesses. If we look at it from the perspective of what challenges, you find that now more than ever, there's going to be increased competition. So we are not only going to be competing within our country, we're going to be competing at a global scale, whether we are competing to retain talent or we are competing to attract talent within the organization. And as well, there is going to be a demand to level up. Then by extension, you find that maybe our business cycles will be shorter because our survival then is affected by the fact that we are having talent from different countries that are supporting businesses within the same economy. I think those are the areas I see would affect opportunities and challenges for African businesses.
Now, in the same note, what do you think about the virtual landscape, like having virtual organizations, virtual companies, rather than some of the traditional offices, and workplaces that could be prevalent right now? What do you think of the future of the virtual landscape in these businesses, working virtually?
I think working virtually introduces reduced costs. You find the way virtual working has been established currently, I don't know if it will change in future. A lot of the resources that organizations used to shoulder now are shouldered by individual employees. The other thing is that we no longer have to be in brick and mortar spaces. So that kind of cuts down rent costs and most of the overheads that we normally have to support as businesses that are working in brick and mortar. So virtual has introduced a reduction of overhead costs for most businesses. And by extension, given employees freedom as well, means that you're no longer tied to support just one organization, you can support two. And I think that also introduces elements of less frustration because now you have freedom of choice.
Thank you. And thank you for your response. And to add to that, for this question is for Dr. Obwatho, In what ways do you believe virtual work can contribute to the economic growth and development as Africa as a whole?
Thank you for that question. I love speaking about African development because that becomes our most important item on the table as Africa today. So virtual work could contribute in a big way in economic growth and development of Africa as a whole, indeed. One of those ways is increase of access to global markets. Having the virtual work opportunity gives that landscape where an individual accesses, the entire globe as a source of markets. So, and besides, when they venture in those spaces, they are able to earn foreign exchange. So that is quite important to an ordinary, African. Secondly, if this kind of space grows, and I'm seeing it actually growing, if it actually grows, I am seeing a possibility of reduction in infrastructure costs over here, the burden of infrastructure costs here in Africa. So number one, under that, there could be growth in out of the growth in internet coverage and connectivity, then there is growth of virtual work. And then out of that, there is now global telecommuting. So an individual can just simply telecommute, work, out there, but they don't have to wake up early in the morning and go to work in town or travel, we don't have to put pressure on our infrastructure. And then there is also reduction in the need for office space, the ergonomics that go with office, provision of services within the offices and all that. So besides that, remember, by venturing out there with the opportunity that that brings, there is also reduction in local competition. They are going out there and competing with those, other competitors out there. So reducing the competitive space locally. Also, that encourages the incubation, the new entrants, the startups. They have a chance to grow because now the concentration, competition is going elsewhere. So it gives a chance for the local businesses to start and to grow and to thrive. And by so saying, indirectly, business survival is going to thrive, and not just survival, even success, if you like. And particularly speaking about survival, it's important to note that there are about 50% of the Kenyan businesses do not get to see their 5th birthdays. And I know Kenyan is a reflection of the African landscape. In fact, some parts of Africa, as Dr. Leting indicated, remember Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa are, the leading boys from the sub-Saharan Africa, if you like. But then in the real sense, you realize some other countries are struggling even more. So this could actually give a kind of a lifeline for the businesses. And then let me also mention there is also increased job opportunities generally. Many opportunities, however, that are created within this space of virtual work. are largely in the technical sector, the IT sector, if you like. Some of us, like we in the higher education, we are beneficiaries. Even today, we are here. We are in this kind of space. We are working virtually. So we are in that kind of space. So teaching and learning also happens quite a bit within that kind of space. And then a very important point that I may need to mention: work-life balance. Work-life balance is brought about by flexible work, your ability to control your schedules, and the results, therefore, items like quality of life, improved productivity, because again, you're free to do what you like, and where you're operating from, you have more time. Remember, you're telecommuting, you're not waking up in the morning and driving through traffic. You just getting up and getting to do what you like doing, and that also brings job satisfaction. Finally, there is enhanced collaboration, the power of collaboration. Out of the collaborative space, complex problems can be solved. And remember, Africa, we have in Africa very unique challenges, or very unique problems, and we need solutions. So some of these spaces are likely to help Africa solve its problems. Thank you.
Thank you. You touched upon some very unique opportunities, like you were saying, for virtual work and teaching and learning, and also in technological field, and also local businesses on the continent. So that leads me to the next question for Dr. Letting. How do you anticipate the rise of virtual work affecting the traditional office culture and work-life balance for employees in African businesses?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, very interesting. My question is closely related to what Dr. Simon discussed about. I think the rise of the virtual work environment, in this case, the remote working arrangement, is likely to affect the setup of families, and because traditionally people have been used to going to the office in Africa, and most offices from 8 o'clock to 5 p.m. in the evening. But with the onset of remote working environment, COVID-19 in around the year 2020, we saw a lot of changes. Governments and state corporations came up with policies to guide matters of remote working, so that members of staff can work from anywhere and still be paid the same salary, if not more. I'm seeing a situation where now employees have tended to like remote working. I have cases in the office where, as a CEO, where a lot of my staff, almost 50%, decided they really did not want to come back to the office. They thought they can work from home. And so I saw a situation where now, should we allow these employees to work from home, they would be able to, of course, cause some disruption in the house. For example, if someone is living within a very small, confined family house, and there is a meeting like this one, you would imagine that at lunchtime or at a meal time, and there's a meeting, the other members of the family would be hearing what is happening. So there will be some disruption to the family work-life situation. Maybe families would like to have a peaceful night or a peaceful morning during the day, but here is someone working and having a virtual meeting. Like now we have a virtual meeting. My family members are having their dinner. I'm just watching them as I listen, as I contribute to this discussion. Very nice indeed. So there's likely to be some disruption in the work-life balances for employees, because, and it's also an opportunity, because I see a situation where employees can have more than one job opportunity. I've seen people multitasking. I've seen officers, people have a meeting in the morning with a team in China, maybe 1 hour or 2 hours, another session in the afternoon with a team in the US, and another one here. So people, I've met young people who have like 5 or so jobs, and they do it online. So remote working environment allows people to increase their incomes, they increase their diversification of resources. And of course, the challenge that comes with that is the cost of health situation, because if people sit for long hours in the same venue, they are likely to have some diseases or work-life lifestyle diseases that can affect those people, because they may not have enough time to have physical exercises. In my view, I think that the rise of virtual work will affect the traditional office space, because we do not then have to have an office space. I do not have to hire space in town, because then I can use my house as an office. So I convert my family house to become an office and maybe leverage or optimize on the resources. So people owning office space that they are leasing or renting out may lose on that front, but people on what you call Airbnb or houses where they live in there can actually enjoy those. So of course comes with challenges. So Africa then presents a very good situation for anyone who wants to invest from other parts of the world. Globalization, I think there's a question from BRICS. Globalization will bring together a number of a shift in some of the countries. Some of the Anglophone countries, for example, because of the language issue, are able to advance. I've had an opportunity to visit some Francophone countries in Central Africa, that is the Democratic Republic of Congo. One of the biggest barriers I saw there is language barrier, because they speak a lot of French. I speak English, so there's a problem of communication in that part of the world. And therefore, for me, from where I sit, there's need then to find a way in which you can have a more synchronized communication approach, where if I do not have to learn French, but I can have a translator or a means of translation, so that I speak in my English, and somebody who is a Francophone can listen and understand in French. And the same thing happens to me when I listen to a Francophone person. I should be able to understand. So for me, remote working has expanded opportunities for individuals and corporations. At the same time, it might also bring challenges. So for me, this in African country where we remote working, young people, for example, will adopt and prefer more of this, unlike for the older generation who have been averse to the adoption of technology. That is my contribution so far, but perhaps I can leave it at that. I can leave it at that so that I give more space for my other colleagues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Sindiga, for the next question is, how do you envision the future of virtual work impacting the overall business landscape in Africa? And can you talk about your industry specifically as well?
I would say there is an increase of sophistication in business practices because of the influence from different countries. There is an increase of injection of new ideas of how to approach challenges, or how to set up business, or how to grow business. And by extension, we are now experiencing growth. But also in the same breath, there is a challenge of organizations who are unable to compete, because if your competitor has integrated virtual employees who have brought in new ideas, you have had the opportunity to improve quality and business practices, and there's a business next to you that isn't adopting the same, you find that there is a death or a weed out of those businesses, because they're unable to compete favorably because of the lack of change. I would also say there is access to globalization. Currently, we are able to make linkages to businesses in different countries, and we are welcomed, which was not the case in the past. In the past, it was very challenging to create partnerships with foreign businesses. I think maybe because the collaborative environment had not been created by COVID, and businesses became desperate and they were now willing to listen. So right now we are finding it a little bit easier to access partners and to find partners who are demonstrating willingness to collaborate with us. There is also access to capital and partnerships in terms of business ideas. We are finding many foreign organizations that are willing to invest in our current setup and to support from that perspective. So there is a growth, or there is access to capital, or there is access to financially stable capitalization for our businesses. We are also finding that there is an improved standard of living for the Africans who are now working in the virtual spaces. Why? Because now they are paid by foreign currency, so it means that they have a little bit more choice than they used to have. They have increased disposable income, and they have now more money at least to spend within our African economy. So in general, that also affects small businesses positively, because find that customers now have increased income to spend on the products and services that are developed and consumed locally. Lastly, I would like to contradict my colleague Simon in regard to business survival. I think right now, if you do not have a strong enough business idea that you're introducing to the market, because of access to capital, access to market, and competition in terms of talent, foreign talent, you find that there is a shorter survival business cycle. I don't think we will be seeing 5 years now before the death of a weak business idea. I think maybe we might run into cycles of 2 years or even 12 months for the business to demonstrate its ability to thrive in the market, because of the market is now open. Forces of demand and supply are in full force. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, I have a question just to elaborate on something. You mentioned the partnerships. Now, do you see increased collaboration and partnerships within the continent, with the 54 countries within the continent, in addition to global partnerships for business relations? Have you seen an increase in those aspects?
Within the continent, I may not be able to speak about it, because we are in the business of international education, which is more into developed nations. I might not have the experience within the continent as to how the temperature is currently.
Okay, thank you. So that leads me to the next question for Dr. Obwatho. How do you envision the future of business in Africa, and what key trends do you expect to shape the continent's economic landscape in the coming years?
Okay, thank you for that question. Kindly allow me to add something to the question on partnerships before coming to that. Within higher education right now, I'm noticing something very interesting. I'm noticing that we have been collaborating so much between, the universities in the global south with institutions or universities in the global north. I am noticing right now a move to ensure that we collaborate amongst ourselves, and I think that is quite important. However, for example, the university where I serve, African Nazarene University, we are having a lot of collaborations with, universities in the United States, especially our sister Nazarene universities around the world. A lot of collaborations, a lot of exchange programs, a lot of, moving across and all that. Now, coming to your question, how you're seeking to find out how I envisage the future of business in Africa and the trends that I expect should be shaping the continent's economic, space. Um, I will enumerate a few of those. Number one, demographics or the shifts of demographies here in Africa. For example, number one, population growth. Right now, as it was indicated by Dr. Leting, the population of Africa is there about 1.26 billion. In the next maybe 30 years or so, 20 something years, it is expected that the population of Africa will be doubling that. That is quite some growth. And with that, definitely it's going to be shaping the economic landscape. And then urbanization as a demographic shift. We are noticing that there's a lot of urbanization that's happening. Places that were known to be rural are now becoming urban. And that comes with its, fair share of successes and the downside as well. Because again, on the positive, it brings industrialization, and it also brings modernization. Probably these are the items that would therefore be playing into remote work or virtual work situation. And then also education growth, which is another demographic feature. Because of growth of education, we are not where we were like 20, 30 years ago, where our parents could barely even read and write. Right now, we are able to communicate very effectively as Africans, using foreign languages. And as it may be known, an average African speaks a lot of languages, and therefore it's getting into that space, and then also affecting our ability to interact with global players, which again impacts our economic landscape. And then something else I may want to say, which is an important factor that is shaping the African landscape, is geopolitics. Geopolitics is about relationships between nations. Many people associate this with the scramble for natural resources. Yes, that's part of it, but then it's not the whole of it. It's largely about international relations. But then under geopolitics, I want to mention 3 items. Number one, you may want to investigate about the theory of kicking away the ladder. Say there are countries that are developed, and once they develop, they kick away the ladder they used to move up to, being a developed nation or developed nations. So they kick away the ladder. Once they kick away the ladder, then the developing countries, especially now Africa and some parts of Asia, find it very difficult then to join the developed countries up there. So part of this could be by design. It could be by design, if I may say. But again, there is a second item, the cost of aid. Aid is a good thing. It's a very good thing. But aid comes with a fair share of its, costs. The fact that you are dependent on aid, it makes it difficult to develop your industrial capacity so that you can also produce. And because of, again, the design of geopolitics, it becomes an issue that is not clearly understood. Are we helping by giving aid, or are we deteriorating the situation by giving aid? And then the last part, planned conflicts. In Africa today, there are a lot of places where there are conflicts which are planned. I want to also speak about digital transformation as an item that is shaping the landscape. Digital transformation. Number one, internet penetration. Internet penetration is quite a factor that is dictating the landscape here. Under it, we have modernization, and technology is now being used as a problem solver. Technology is being used as a problem solver, and also improving the innovative space. So something else that is so important that's shaping how we are operating here economically is African unity. And by the way, it has a lot of prospects looking into the future, African unity. So remember, first of all, as a background, Africa is the most centrally located continent. And that brings a lot of blessings to Africa. Remember, this is, fair climatic conditions, a lot of natural resources, and all that. But again, we are diverse. And again, of course, I mentioned we have a lot of natural resources in terms of how endowed we are. So, and we are the second most populous continent, and not just populous. Africa is the continent that has the youngest population in the world as a continent. With that kind of a landscape, there are prospects for Africa. We have prospects for Africa. And especially if we become awake and alive to the realities and to the prospects and to the opportunities, then I believe Africa is very likely going to move on. And now speaking about African unity, a united Africa is a global powerhouse. And I'm sure there are some countries out there that are so keen, and some players out there that are so keen to ensure that Africa does not unite. Is that controversial? Maybe, maybe not. I'm sure I didn't come here to only, speak things that are friendly to the ear. I want to give realities as they are. And then, of course, there is infrastructure and political stability. Under political stability, issues like better peace building in Africa. Today we have a lot of peace building initiatives, and probably that is giving us an opportunity to do business and to develop the continent, as it were. And then integration, democratic spaces are growing, although we have the negatives, like the tribalisms, items like tribalism, corruption, and poor, governance, but still there is a formidable force that is fighting against these negatives. Just a question that I'm asking myself: the role of religion, I'm not very sure. Remember, Africa is the most religious continent in the world, the most religious. Everyone believes in a God in Africa. Everyone goes to either a mosque or a church or, a temple somewhere. So I'm not very sure. It's something that I'm still trying to digest. Very lastly, let me just mention that we have challenges that come with remote working and virtual working. And Dr. Letting mentioned a few of those. Let me mention just a few others that, and these are things I'm noticing right within my space, like where I work. I noticed that sometimes it's very difficult to control organizational confidentiality, or let me not call them secrets, but confidentiality. You know, sometimes you could be spilling some information left and right by working, remotely. I've noticed in the last few months, people resigning because they are called back to work. It means they are working at home, very comfortable, but as soon as they are recalled and it is now mandatory that they have to come back to work, they resign. What does it mean? It means that there's a chance that they could be doing jobs, irregularly, engaging in a job and another job, and somehow it might not then work as soon as they are called back to work. I'm noticing also the lapse of team building. Sometimes building an organizational team becomes easier when it is a face-to-face kind of environment. And then there's also the work culture. Work culture seems to be going down with virtual connectivity. And let me give an example. We were cracking a joke with some friends here, and someone was trying to share an experience that uh, they had joined a meeting, virtual meeting like this, and someone had a towel wrapped around their waist, but up here they had a suit, a tie, that kind of thing. So I'm just throwing in a few of those. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Thank you all very much for a wonderful and informative panel presentation. And we will now use the remaining time to address questions received in the chat box. So one of the questions, and anyone can answer this, is how can African nations work together to create a focus on infrastructure and education that better supports virtual work for those nations where industry is not as strong, such as maybe Nigeria, South Africa, or Kenya, etc.? Anyone can answer.
Could you take that question again? My internet was a little shaky. I didn't get the question very well. Sorry about that.
Yes, I'll repeat this. It's how can African nations work together to create a focus on infrastructure and education that better support virtual work for those nations where industry is not as strong, such as maybe Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, etc. So basically, how can they work together?
Can I try to respond to that one?
Mm-hmm.
As Dr. Obwatho takes a breather, allow me to say that, and even Davin, I think for me, I'll make a very short, brief statement that it's about collaborations and partnerships. It is time that Africa, through the African Union, put up streams of partnerships through professional bodies, as well as universities like the African Nazarene University, or even professional bodies like Kenya Accountants and Secretaries National Examination Board, because then we can because the talent and skills in Africa is very diverse, very rich. And so my belief is that it has to be deliberate on the part of the governments. The leadership of governments in Africa have to come together, unite, and strategize for. We currently have the Africa 2063 agenda. And I think one of the things that it talks about is the skill development and issues to do with embracing the need for diversification in Africa. So I think for me, from my perspective, is that it only behoves on the leadership of Africa, the political leadership, to just agree to partner through collaborations and allow private investors and individuals to work together through the public-private partnership arrangements to be able to deliver on the mandate of Africa Agenda 2063. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. And for the sake of time, we'll just have one more question from the chat before we closed, and that's remote working was expanded because of the pandemic. However, the idea of hybrid situation. So is that something that could work in Africa, like perhaps 2 days at home and 3 days in the office, like that hybrid work environment for employees?
I think it's already working right now. A majority of the organizations who continued working in remote during the pandemic right now have a hybrid model where they work a few days at home and a few days at work. So it is ongoing. Probably the employees, based on Simon's comment, might want 100% remote so that they can do their other things, and they don't necessarily have to quit from other jobs because of the demand of the hybrid setup.
Thank you. So we would like to thank our speakers, Ms. Durvine Sindiga, Dr. Simon Obwatho, and Dr. Nicholas Letting, and everyone for your attendance in today's session. This concludes our session, and please enjoy the rest of the conference, and please plan to attend day 2 of the 2023 Cabo-CBN Virtual Conference, which will be held tomorrow. So again, thank you for your participation, and again, thank you to our presenters.
Thank you. Asante sana. Asante, 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 asante means thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Kwaheri means bye.
Bye.
Hey, wait, I got to try too. Asante?
Asante.
Asante,
Asante
asante,
means thank you.
asante.
Thank you.
Asante, asante, asante.
Thank you, guys.
Great job. Thank you. Very
Thank you.
informative.
Have a good day.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right.